You cannot beat fear to the finish line. You are not cheating your way around pain. You are actively pursuing more and more of it. Today's video is all about presence and how being present to your current experience allows you to build confidence, self-trust, self-esteem, allows you to become more flexible and resilient as a person, how it helps you to release resistance and therefore attract more good in your life. Let's get right into it. A couple weeks ago, I slept over at my friend's house and my car got towed. And I had just set aside like my spending money that I had left over from my check, and I had $400 left. And so I was like, okay, fine, like let me try and like go with the flow and like not try to like make a story about this. Like, let me just, accept that this is what's happening. And as long as it's less than $400, everything will be okay. I check it, it's 365, and I was like, okay, good things are happening already. Tell me why I go, and because it's the weekend, they charged me the overnight fee, and it's an extra $110. I ended up paying $475. I was so mad. Mind you, it wasn't just that I had to pay an extra $110. Something was going on with the people ahead of me. And so I waited in line for like 2 hours. Honestly, almost three, 2.5, 3 hours for my car. So not only am I having to dish out an extra $500 or an extra $110 that I wasn't expecting to have to spend, which was more than I had like 2.5, 3 hours to think about my life choices and my life decisions as I was waiting for my car. When I tell you I was fucking pissed, I was so fucking pissed. However, because I had that much time to like suffer and ruminate and go through all the what ifs and like, oh, all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, as I was trying to regulate my nervous system as this was happening, I learned something really important. It was a very expensive lesson. It was a $500 lesson, but I learned the best way to get through a difficult situation or a situation that feels less than favorable is to be as present as you can for it. What do I mean by that? Every single time that I would kind of go into my mind, because at this point I'm standing in line waiting. There's literally two people ahead of me, and for some reason the line is not moving. And I would just like wander off into my thoughts, and I was thinking of all the things I could have done differently. I could have went home. I wasn't even supposed to sleep over. I should have said something about where I was parked. I should have, could have, should have, would have. I should have set an alarm. All of these different ideas and different timelines of how things could have gone differently played across in my mind. And then every time that something would bring my attention back into the present moment, it's like the situation felt that much worse. I was re-experiencing and multiplying the pain and frustration of the experience because I kept going off into this la la land of non-existent realities in which this was not happening to me. I was thinking of all the ways that I could have spent that money, the ways I had already planned on spending that money. And then here I was. And so I was like, okay, I'm like really hurting my own feelings. Mind you, this was not like a quick process. Like I kept having to bring myself back and ground myself into the reality. But I realized, okay, I'm just hurting my own feelings at this point. Let me just be here now for this experience. And what I realized was that when I didn't allow myself to create all of these false realities of things that were not happening and were not going to happen because it's not what happened. That's just not what happened. When I allowed to just let myself sit with what was and deal with reality on reality's terms and allow myself to go with the flow of what was actually happening and what was going to continue to happen. Like I still had like some like little hope of like maybe they'd be like, "Ah, okay, we'll just like take off the extra 110." That didn't happen, but I held off some hope. But when I sat with it, I realized that the negative emotions that came up were just like the negativity that I felt around the situation stayed even keel. I'm not saying that it all went away and like I was present in the moment and like that just allowed me to like transcend the experience. No, it was still a really shitty situation. But in being present, I was like, okay, well, how am I going to deal with this? I can just split the cost on like my credit card and my debit card. And I kind of just allowed myself to focus on what was. And in my case, I knew what the outcome was going to be. I was going to have to dish out $500 that I did not have, and I was going to make my car back, and then I was going to go home, etc. But there was a slight element of unknown in terms of the amount of time that I was going to spend waiting for my car. But I realized that sometimes when there is that element of unknown, of, well, I knew I was gonna get my car back, or I knew that I was gonna have to spend $500. Not everybody has that like linear trajectory with whatever that they're dealing with. Sometimes you literally do not know how things are going to turn out. And that's when we start catastrophizing. That's when we start thinking about all the contingency plans that you could come up with so that if this goes wrong and this goes wrong and this goes wrong, you're prepared and X, Y, and Z. And in this situation, I also realized how damaging that is. And a lot of the times we do that. We plan for all these contingencies in our mind to help ourselves feel prepared and to protect ourselves. We want to emotionally prepare for the worst case scenario so that when this thing happens, it's like nothing can hurt your feelings more than yourself type thing. It's kind of like this mindset of like, if I put myself through it first, or if I tell myself this first, then it won't hurt as much when it happens in real life, if it happens in real life. And this is where this quote comes in. It's from Brianna Weiss, 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think. And it says, you cannot beat fear to the finish line. You are not cheating your way around pain. You are actively pursuing more and more of it. And so again, with this idea of staying present in the moment, I realize the reason why we don't stay present for these situations that have this unknown outcome is because we want to be able to beat fear to the finish line. We want to be able to get out ahead of the future and plan and prepare for it. You cannot beat fear to the finish line. We try to get out ahead of whatever reality is going to bring us. You can't beat it. Even if you do come up with the exact experience of what ends up happening, you like predict the future, you didn't get ahead of a single moment of reality. In the present moment, you got this fictional future, right? But you didn't get out ahead of anything. And now, not only are you having to experience the pain and the stress and the anxiety of the reality that you created in the present moment in your mind, the fictional reality that you created in your present moment, now you're also having to experience it when it comes in the future. If it comes in the future. Like sometimes we think like, okay, well, if I hadn't prepared for this, like I wouldn't have been able to deal with it in the future because the only reason why I was able to do it was because I already planned for it in my head. No, the only reason why you were able to deal with it in the future was not because you prepared and catastrophized and like thought about all of this in advance. It was because the version of you that experienced it as an actual, like physical manifestation in the reality had no choice. You don't have the choice to just not. Life comes at you fast and it keeps going. It keeps going. If a debt collector hits you up, you have the opportunity to fight, flight, freeze, whatever, but the problem keeps coming. And the current version of you is the only one that has the opportunity and the capacity to actually deal with that problem. You take away your ability to trust that version of them when spend the night before your, big exam or your big presentation catastrophizing and trying to mentally get out ahead of all of the things that could go wrong. So in that sense, you're bringing in more suffering into your current moment. You're taking away your ability to trust in your future self's capacity to deal with whatever comes. Because the crazy thing is that this version of you slash the future version of you, they're the same being just moving through time. And what makes you think that that version of you that has way more, what's it called? They have way more data. They're living it. They know exactly what the actual current problem or the actual current situation is. What makes you think that that version of yourself would somehow be less prepared than the version of you that has 10 possible things that could go wrong and you're like trying to give a little bit of energy to figure out all of them? If you trust the current version of yourself that is in your bed catastrophizing and thinking of all the things that could go wrong and how you're going to deal with it, then you do trust yourself. You do trust yourself because not only are you like coming up with all of these ideas, you are figuring out how to solve 10 different problems. And the crazy thing is that when we catastrophize and when we try to get out ahead of it by thinking about all of these like fictional things, very rarely are we actually figuring out what we will do and how we will respond. We're actually just thinking about all of the negative things that could happen. If you have watched Inside Out 2, it kind of talks about this this is a spoiler, but if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. Riley is about to fall asleep. She has her huge hockey game the next day, and anxiety in her mind is like, oh my gosh, like tomorrow's a really big day. Like we need to prepare Riley as much as possible. Everybody come up with every possible thing that could go wrong so that she's prepared. Everybody starts scribbling, all the workers start scribbling a million different things that could go wrong. And she's like in her bed, like, what am I gonna do? And it's like, you do this thinking that you're going to get peace, thinking that, okay, once I do this, I'm going to feel more prepared. But you do the exact opposite. In trying to get out ahead of fear, in trying to get out ahead of pain and beat it to the finish line, by trying to prepare yourself, you give yourself more of it. Riley, she was in her bed. She was bringing, by trying to prepare and, emotionally protect herself from any negative situation that could happen, she was bringing into a moment that could have been one of peace and calm and rest. She was bringing into that situation a bunch of fear, anxiety, negativity. When you try to create all of these scenarios in order to kind of like protect yourself from the emotional blow and impact that you might receive from whatever the future actually brings to you, you're multiplying the pain that will come to you by however much. And that's not even with the guarantee that something bad will even happen. Like, think about it this way: you're trying to prevent yourself from getting your feelings or your expectations really devastated and disappointed when something happens in the future. So you plan for it in the present moment. And you're feeling all of these things and you're trying to process. You're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if that happens? X, Y, and Z. And then things go perfectly fine. Now, you didn't just get like this wonderful experience of like, I went to sleep the night before, just determined to see how reality was going to play out. It turned out great. I got to enjoy it. Now, you had 5 hours of a sleepless night and restlessness, and the next day everything was fine. Or say the opposite happens: 5 hours of restless, sleepless night. The next day, maybe one of those things happens, maybe none of them happens, but something that is not what you wanted to happen happens. Now you've experienced the 5 hours of suffering, and then also what happened in real life. You didn't get out ahead of it, you didn't beat it to the finish line. You just experienced more of it, you multiplied it. And the crazy thing is whether you had planned all of these contingencies or not, this current version of you is the only one that could actually deal with whatever the reality was. Whatever went wrong, whatever you had to face. Did you have to talk to your boss? Did you have to apologize to somebody? Did you have to pick up your things because everything fell on the ground and whatever? Only that version of you could actually deal with it. Once I started practicing this idea of just bringing myself to the present moment and sitting with it, whether it was good or bad, I realized that a lot of the times that was what was happening. I was in this objective reality, maybe laying in my bed, ruminating, catastrophizing. That's one of the cognitive distortions that I really struggle with, just catastrophizing. I think of all of the worst case possible scenarios that could possibly happen. And I'm like paralyzed in bed. And I've tried to bring myself back into the present moment. What's happening here now? I'm laying in my bed and I'm bringing this situation that is not real into this current reality. How can I be present to this current moment? I'm in my bed. I'm safe. The lights are off. Being present to this current moment would mean closing my eyes and going to bed. That's what being present to the current moment would be. When I was standing in line, how can I be present to this current moment? I can sit with it. Yeah, it sucks. I can plan on how I'm going to split the money, how I'm going to pay it off. I can, kind of budget. I can sit here and kind of start budgeting for, how I'm going to move my money around now that I'm spending $500 that I wasn't expecting to spend. What can I do that will actually be beneficial by being here in the present moment? So, the key to mitigate your suffering and to build your self esteem, that trust and belief that the future version of yourself can and will deal with reality as it presents itself. That only happens when you stay present. When you stay present to your current negative reality, you're not multiplying the pain by comparing it to some sort of fictional reality, fantasy reality that isn't happening and isn't going to happen. When it's something that's still in the future and you still are not sure what's happening, you are multiplying the pain. The suffering that is actually proportional to what is currently happening Say you're in the hospital and you're waiting for the doctors to come back. Something is wrong. You know for sure something is wrong. You don't know exactly what is wrong, but you trying to come up with 100 different things that could be wrong takes that moment of waiting that could just be like, I'm just going to be here now. I'm just going to be here now. I'm stressed. I'm terrified. I'm anxious. All of those things are valid for what's going on. I'm not saying zen out and just like snuggle up in your hospital bed. All of those feelings, they're valid. Sit with them. Sit with the feelings that are coming here and now without you adding to it by adding this other realm of, monsters that you're bringing because you're making a monster out of the unknown. I'm just not going to think about it because I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to think about all the millions of things that could be wrong because even if I get it right, I won't know until the doctor tells me. Let me sit with it here and now. As stressed as I am, I'm not going to let my mind wander to help me prepare for the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario will be whatever happens. And maybe it won't even be the worst case scenario. Let me not add more suffering to this moment that is already really stressful. Let me wait to deal with reality when reality comes. Let me not project a false reality on top of everything that the current moment is already bringing to me. Right now, I'm already feeling stress, anxiety, everything because I'm in the hospital. Let me not add to that suffering. And let me trust that the future version of myself that does get the prognosis, that does get the test results, that does get the answer, that version of me is going to deal with it because they will. And you could be like, well, how do I know that they can? How do I know that my future self will? Because you have. Everything that you have gone through, you have gotten through and you have dealt with in some way or another. What doesn't kill you maybe doesn't necessarily make you stronger, but it didn't kill you. What doesn't kill you doesn't kill you. You're here because you dealt with it, you processed it. Even if you ran from it, you did something about it. You chose to run. Even if you hid from it, you did something. You responded. You chose to hide. If you fought it, you did something. You chose to fight. That version of you that experienced it did something. Trust your future self to do and take the necessary steps as things are happening. Trust that that version of yourself is going to talk to the professionals, that is going to, Google or ChatGPT and see what other things that you could do. Trust the flow of life to come to you. Trust that once you get your results, things will begin to align for you to maybe meet somebody whose family member also had that and they could tell you, a positive experience that they had or something that they tried that really helped them. Trust that as you deal with the current and present reality, other things will also come into your experience that will help you deal with it because you are not bringing in the fear, pain, resistance, and stress, all this extra baggage, and because you're not bringing in all this extra resistance to the situation because you've already tried to get out ahead of it. That's a big part of manifestation of like letting go of resistance. They say what you resist persists, but the whole idea of resistance is resisting the flow of life, resisting whatever is coming into your reality. There's mental resistance where you refuse to allow yourself to believe that this is your reality. You're in denial. You're like, no, no, no. You're resisting what is happening. And so whatever is happening is just going to persist and multiply. Like if a debt collector hits you up and says, we're suing you because we're trying to get our money back. And you're like, nope, nope, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore it until I can't. I'm just going to ignore it and I'm just going to pretend it's not happening. I'm going to mentally resist reality. The problem persists and compounds. There's no actual resisting. There's only like the mental resistance. And when you have that mental resistance, you don't allow experiences to pass through you. Recently, I had this really like dark moment where I was going through I was kind of just like reflecting on my life and like everything that I haven't accomplished and like how old I am and all this stuff. And I just got this like really strong stream of negative consciousness of just self-hatred and feeling defeated and feeling like I would never surmount to anything and I was just so mediocre. I literally wrote it all down. It's like 2 pages of me writing down every negative thought and belief that was coming to me in the moment. And mind you, I wasn't necessarily writing this down passively. I was literally crying as I was writing it because it was hurting my feelings so much to like allow myself to believe those things about myself. And I just surrendered. I was like, you know what? I keep telling myself that I'm going to accomplish X, Y, and Z, and I haven't done anything. I haven't done any of it. So let me just accept that I'm going to be mediocre. I'm a dreamer, not a doer, and I'm not going to make this happen. So let me just sit with it. Let me just accept that about myself. And I let it happen. Because anytime that these, fears come up in me, I'm so stressed and I'm so anxious and I like do so much and like burn out because I'm coming from a place of fear and resistance. Whereas this time I was just like, fine, fine, that's my reality. Like, that's who I am. I'm never gonna amount to anything. I'm just gonna settle for any kind of job and like maybe I can do this on the side and like whatever I suck and my life will be miserable, but I'll just make the most of it because, at least I'll have accepted that this is my reality instead of always dreaming and thinking that I could be more and I never will be. I did that probably for like 20 minutes. I'm not recommending this to anybody. It was a low point for me too. But afterwards, I just kind of laid down and I was like, okay. And I felt pretty dead inside. And I pulled out my phone and I started listening to like, videos on like spirituality. I was listening to something by Aaron Dowdy. And what he was saying just like wasn't resonating. I was like, yeah, I'm now spiritually dead. I'm spiritually dead inside. This is what my life will feel like the rest of my life. It'll feel monotonous and whatever. And I just kept listening because I genuinely just enjoy videos on spirituality and I really enjoy Aaron Dowdy as a creator. And I listened to one video and about halfway through I was like feeling a little bit of a spark. I was feeling a little happy again. By the end of that video, I was like, I think I can do this. I think I'll give it another shot. Listen to another video. Same thing. I was like, okay, maybe I'm fine. Maybe I won't settle for that life. Maybe I'll try and go about achieving what I want in a different way, in a way that feels more logical and natural to me. But maybe I'm not dead inside. Maybe these videos like do still make me feel something. And that moment was so big for me because I have had that stream, those 2 pages, 3 pages of like negative fears and beliefs about not surmounting to anything my whole life. I've been running from those 3 pages my entire life. I refuse to let them come up because I'm like, oh, well, if they come up, then that's going to be what happens. If I face this, then that means that I'm settling for it. Then that means I'm agreeing with it. But but when I finally allowed myself to face it and surrender to it and accept this is where I'm at. This is how I feel. I'm going to stop fighting these negative thoughts, feelings, and beliefs about myself. They came and they went. Was it instant? No. Did it hurt a lot as it was happening? Yeah, a whole lot. I I wouldn't go back and read it because it was like, I feel like I could at this point because I already faced it and I'm like, okay, these were feelings. They don't necessarily have to be true. And even if they were true in that moment, because they felt very true in that moment, they're not true now. But I faced it. I dealt with it. I dealt with reality as reality was presenting itself. And I stopped resisting it. You can only allow life, your feelings, your experiences, you can only allow them to pass through if you don't resist. And all of our resistance is because we want to protect ourselves from whatever this experience is bringing, whether it's pain, suffering, heartache. There's no getting out around it. That's just a part of life. That's life is that coin and it's pain and joy. It's two sides of the same coin. There's no getting through life without pain and heartache and some situations that just kind of suck going through them. There's no going through life without getting sick. There's no going through life without getting some sort of fine or maybe some sort of accident or some sort of catastrophe. That's just life. Things fall apart. Things fall back together. Things fall apart again. things fall back together. Things fall apart and stay falling apart when you don't face it, when you don't deal with it. Because when something falls apart and it feels broken forever, it's not because the situation is not mendable. It's because you have allowed yourself to view that as the end. Even death. Even death can be transcended by the mind when you say, the love that I have for them will exist forever. The memory of them I will carry within me forever. The death of their corpse is final, but that you've infused more into that situation. Does that make sense? You've now somehow infused life into what was meant to be final. There is nothing that is truly final unless you let it be final, unless you shut yourself to it. And when you shut yourself to it to protect yourself from it, you're multiplying the pain. Because now instead of facing what is and seeing, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the dragon I'm dealing with has 5 heads, now you have this. I actually have no idea how many heads it has. It might have 10 million. It might be one of those, is it a hydra where you like cut it off and another head grows? You'll never know until you face it and try to cut a head off. Yeah, maybe the dragon that you were imagining had 3 heads, but every time you cut it, it grew 2. And then this one has 5 heads, but every time you cut it, like, it weakens a little bit. Whatever you're dealing with in your imagination, because I promise you, all of these things that you resist in reality, it's not like they just like disappear. No, they live and grow in the floorboards of your subconscious and they come up in one way or another. And if that situation, maybe you ignore it and, somehow it just goes away and you just stop experiencing it in your reality, because that fear and that energy of resistance towards a specific situation that elicited this kind of emotion is in your energetic field, because you saw it and then you suppressed it. It's going to come up in a different way. It's going to come up in a different way because the point of life is to experience it, to go through it, to process it. I didn't say to be happy about it, to feel good about it. It's just to go through it, to learn how to surrender to life, to learn how to surrender to the flow. And the craziest thing that I've experienced after I've started practicing just leaving the future to future me. Mind you, I give myself one. I give myself one contingency. I give myself one catastrophe. Because I'm not, all of a sudden cured, but I do know that I have the control over my mind. I have the autonomy and the capacity to say, you get one catastrophic event happening in your mind, and it doesn't stop there. You don't get to just think of one worst case scenario. You have to actually plan, how are you going to respond? A lot of the times we think about the worst case scenario, but we don't actually plan on how we're going to deal with it. We just think about the worst case scenario. So I'm like, you get one. You get to think about one worst case scenario and how you will deal with it, and then you're going to bed. And I do. I think about one worst case scenario, how I'm going to deal with it, and then I put all of my trust in my future self. I'm like, I know she'll do it. I know she'll deal with it because I've done it my whole life. You've done it your whole life. No past version of you has ever dealt with the present. Present version of you always dealt with the present. So trust that the future present version of you is going to deal with it to the best of their abilities. So I leave the future to the future, and I trust my future self to deal with my future. And the thing that I've discovered when I do that is that things come out so much better than I could have ever hoped for or imagined. And it's because I don't bring along the energetic resistance and all the negative energy from what would have built up if I spent the last 5 hours before I went to bed catastrophizing or, bracing myself for whatever the impact is going to be. I don't know how scientifically true this is, but I feel like you break more bones when you freeze and stiffen and brace yourself for impact than when you allow yourself to be thrown. Don't quote me on that, but visually I imagine someone that is not malleable, that is not flexible to whatever life throws at them, they get hurt a lot more than someone that isn't willing to bend and be flexible with whatever's coming. You give yourself that sense of elasticity when you allow the future version of you to deal with the future. Because that future version of you hasn't been, stiffened and petrified by all of the terrifying things that the current version of you is thinking could possibly happen. She'll go with the flow. She'll figure it out. She'll pick up the pieces, just like you've picked up all the pieces of you every single time. This last year was the worst year of my life. By a lot, by a lot. And honestly, like, even as I say that, I'm like, it was still a very blessed year, but it was the worst year of my life. And reflecting back on it, I was like, I have no idea how I got through it. None. But the only answer and the obvious answer is I took it moment by moment. I dealt with it a day at a time. I was going through the worst depression that I've been through in a long time. And I've had a lot of serious bouts of depression. I built my confidence back up from scratch. I didn't even know what it felt like to have zero confidence. I have no idea how, like, looking back, I can't really tell you, like, this is everything that I did. I just know that every single day, anytime a negative feeling would arise, I'd sit with it and I'd journal through it and I'd write and I'd let myself cry and I picked an exercise that I wanted to try to do and I tried to be consistent, and anything that came up, I allowed myself to sit with and process. And after a while, all the muck that is dirtying your flow, it comes out. And now the current is clear. The flow is clearer. You're happier. You feel more confidence. You build more resilience. I could be in the same exact emotional place that I was last year if I hadn't done that. Because my current reality could have completely changed. I could be a millionaire. But if I was still feeling about myself the way that I felt last year, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter that all of a sudden my external reality was my dream reality. My inner soul was in turmoil. Am I currently living in my dream reality? No. Am I currently living in probably the best mental space that I've ever had in my life? Yes. Yes. But that requires presence. That requires you to accept the good and the bad, not trying to emotionally and mentally run away from a situation by living in a fantasy because you refuse to accept that sometimes life brings you lemons. And sometimes all you can do is make sour lemonade. At least you made something. At least you dealt with it. At least you did something with it and you moved through it. So, how do you do that? How do you begin to practice presence in your life in order to allow yourself to flow through life with the least resistance as possible? How do you learn to be present for your reality? You practice meditating. You begin your meditative practice. And meditation is a practice. It's not something that you perfect. And even if you perfect it, that's not the point. It's a meditation practice, just like soccer practice, just like basketball practice. It's practice for the real game. And what you're practicing for, the real game that meditation is practicing for, is real life. Meditation is you practicing noticing when your mind has wandered and bringing it back to the present moment. Meditation gives you a space to practice noticing when your thoughts have wandered and becoming more conscious of yourself as the awareness behind the thoughts so that you don't believe that your thoughts are you. That whole idea of I think, therefore I am is so misleading because it makes you think that the thoughts you are thinking is what makes you you. The thoughts that you're thinking is just kind of like a byproduct of your ability to think as a human being with a mind. Your awareness behind it is the I am. Your consciousness is the I am. And so it's meditation is waking up that awareness. It's waking up your consciousness, being aware that you are that consciousness. And so your thoughts wander. Literally doing anything when you're showering, when you're driving, you either disassociate and you're living in la la land, but your mind wanders. You're not fully present in the moment. And meditation, it gives you the opportunity to be like, yeah, I'm a human being. My mind wanders. Let me learn how to notice when it wanders so I can bring it back, so I can be in control of it. Let me learn how to use my mind. Meditation feels like this thing that is so like out of reach and like whatever, but it's just a practice. Anytime you're about to take on any new sport, any new anything, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that you're supposed to learn, but that's what practice is for. And so your meditative practice is literally just to help you become aware of when your thoughts have wandered. Because presence, the whole idea of like the power of now is that your presence and your awareness and your, you know, being here in the present moment is the only place that you can actually change your life in, because you can only change what's currently here and now. And if you're not here and now, how are you going to create change in your here and now? And so the whole point is to be able to notice when you're not here and now and bring it back to the here and now. And so with meditation, you have a home base, and it could be your breath. Maybe you're looking at a candle and like your eyes are fixated on it, and your mind is going to wander. That's kind of the point. You're practicing bringing it back. And, usually I think I used to start off with like 10 minutes, and sometimes my alarm would go off, or like I'd start and I'd be, breathing, 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 and then some time would pass and I'd be like, oh shoot, like I didn't realize that I forgot that I was supposed to be meditating. And then like immediately after my alarm would go off. So I literally spent 10 minutes like in another place when I was supposed to be meditating. But even that last moment of like, oh shoot, I was supposed to be meditating and coming back. That's what you practice. That's the whole point of the practice. That's you like making a goal, a scoring. I'm not athletic. That's you making a score. That's you practicing your form. And so every single time you do it, you become more and more aware of it. And so, and you become better and faster at noticing like when your thoughts have gone rampant. And then you also start learning to notice when you're physically reacting to your thoughts. Like sometimes you might not be aware that you're thinking a bunch of negative things, but all of a sudden you start feeling so sick and your stomach hurts and you're stressed and whatever. And then you're like, oh, wait, what was I thinking? Oh, I was catastrophizing about a million things that could go wrong. That's why my body is interpreting these sensations. That's what my body is interpreting, my thoughts and emotions, and creating all of these physical sensations in my body that feel bad because they're attached to negative thoughts. And so you practice meditating so that you learn to be more present in your current reality. And so you do that. You practice, practice, practice meditating every single day. As I'm saying this, I'm like, I don't meditate every single day, but I need to. It's something that can only help. And so you practice meditating so you can be better at noticing when you are no longer being present and bring yourself back to being in the moment, where now you have a choice. Now you can say you get to think about one bad thing that can happen and create one plan for it, and then you go to sleep. You get to have the choice to say, I am not going to think about all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas anymore because they didn't. And every time I come back from that coulda, shoulda, woulda, I feel worse about my reality. You start practicing coming back to the present moment, because when you deal with reality on reality's terms, as reality is presenting itself, you get to make the best, most informed decision of how you should be responding to give yourself the kind of experience that you would like to have. Getting towed sucked. Waiting for my car for 3 hours on a Saturday morning sucked. Knowing that I was going to have to pay $500 that I didn't have sucked. But the only thing that sucked more was coming back to that reality 10 times. 10 times instead of just being like, this one reality sucks. It sucks and it's going to stay sucking because it just is what it is for right now. Since I've started practicing trying to be present for the good and the bad, like I said, I've told you, I feel like I've noticed life open up itself to me. And I think it's because when I go in to any situation trusting my future self, I'm radiating and actively acting out trust. Acting out trust by not worrying, by not letting myself ruminate and catastrophize. And so when I trust, when I am in the energetic and vibrational frequency of trust, it's kind of positive belief. It's belief that I can deal with this and everything will be okay because that version of me will deal with it no matter what it is. And so I attract things that are easier to deal with. Or maybe they're not even easier to deal with, but I am now in the frequency of someone that deals with things better. And so what you think you're accomplishing by ruminating and by catastrophizing and trying to get out ahead of it creates more suffering and misses your objective by 180. It does the complete opposite of what you are trying to accomplish. And what feels the most scary to do, to let the unknown remain unknown until it reveals itself, is actually the best thing you can do. Now you have a full night's rest to, maybe be the best version of yourself to deal with tomorrow versus, yeah, you have, 30 contingencies, but now you're running off of 2 hours of sleep. You have to notice when fear and ego and control are the things that are guiding your actions. Because when you are dealing with that kind of resistance, you're not allowing life to flow through you. And that is the point. That is how you manifest things. That's how the best possible scenario comes out. When you loosen your grip and you accept that living and experiencing life and manifestation, it's a co-creative experience. It's give and take. It's, we meet each other here and we create something from it. It's dealing with reality on reality's terms and showing up as the best version of you, knowing that you can do it. You've done it your whole life. What didn't kill you didn't kill you. And so now you're living a life that is more in flow and in alignment because you're facing reality. You're dealing with it. You're doing something about it. You're not running from it. You're not resisting it. And it gives you the ability to kind of experience life for what it actually is, which is both positive and negative, good and bad, desirable and undesirable. My camera died. So we were talking about presence. And when you begin to be more intentional about being present to your current reality, your life gets better. Not because more good things happen. I mean, I think more good things do happen. You start attracting more good things, but you start experiencing life for what it actually is. You start being present for both the good and the bad. And the majority of your daily experiences can be enjoyed. The day to day, like humdrum things, are enjoyable. Getting ready for work, it's kind of fun to get ready. Showering feels so good to shower. Using the restroom feels really great to use the restroom. Eating feels really nice to eat something that you enjoy. These like mundane things, going for a walk, literally anything that you do in terms of like moving around can be enjoyable when you're present for it. I was, worried about creating this video because I tend to really struggle and like trip over my words whenever it comes to recording. And I kept trying to like practice what I was going to say. And one of the most frustrating things about recording, at least for me, is that I will practice an entire podcast episode. It's literally so good. It's so good. And I'll do it like 4 times in my head and it's so good. And then I get in front of the camera and I freeze. And I'm like, where are all of the words? I said it so well last night when I practiced my whole entire podcast. And then when it comes to actually doing it, I freeze. And so I was about to shower and I was like I was trying to get into that mode of like, how am I going to say this? How am I going to start? Trying to like script the whole thing. And I was like, nope, we're not doing that. I'm trusting my future self to deal with it. Let me be here now and enjoy the present moment. I was showering. Let me be here now. And I got to enjoy my shower. Not 100% because I kept, having to bring myself back. But in the moments that I was present, I got to enjoy showering. And the majority of your life is just kind of like the in between moments, the in between moments. And when you're not infusing your day to day normal life with stress, anxiety, overthinking, negative thinking, prepping and planning and worrying about the future, you get to just experience what is. When you're in your bed doing all of these things, if you allow yourself to be present, you get to enjoy your bed and how good it feels to lay down after a whole day of working. When you're eating your lunch and you're so freaking stressed because you have another assignment that's due, you could actually be enjoying like the best meal of your life. Yesterday, I work with kids and I'd been sick the whole week prior. So yesterday was my first day coming back and all the kids were so excited to see me. And one of the little kids came up to me and he was like, Miss T, I have a really good lunch today. And I was like, oh, that's so good. You always have a good lunch because he does. He like always has like the best like homemade meal. And then supper comes around and one of the boys is like, you have a crush on so and so. And he loses it. He is so emotionally like impacted by this. He's devastated. He cries the entire supper period, the entire lunch period. And I talked to him a couple of times and I just kind of gave him his space, but he's like eating his delicious lunch, like, and I was like, Jet, I was like, his name. I was like, Jet, you were so excited about your lunch. You told me today that your food was so good. Food never tastes as good as it is when you're crying. Like nothing actually feels as good as it is when your mental state is somewhere totally different. If he had just, mind you, he's 6. I don't expect him to regulate his emotions and, be like, I could let that go. I don't have a crush on that girl. I think he might, but whatever. I'm just going to be here and enjoy my delicious meal. Letting go of these things and trading them for what is present here and now and allowing yourself to, even if it means focusing on the most granular aspect of that experience, finding what is good or pleasant about it. Say you're, waiting for the bus and it's like freezing cold and it's snowing and, it's a miserable experience. How granular can you get in terms of presence and awareness until you find like the pearl? How granular can you get? I'm grateful that I can feel cold. Can you literally feel your skin freezing off and be like, yep, this is the human experience? Sensations. I have the ability to sense heat and cold. When you are present, you get to acknowledge when circumstances could be objectively viewed as enjoyable, and you get to choose the energy that you're going to bring into situations that might not be objectively enjoyable. After I got my car towed, I was like, you know what? I learned a lot from that. It really sucked a lot. But I sat in my car and I wrote a pamphlet about all of the things that you can learn from getting your car towed. Did I get my $500 back? No. Did I get those 3 hours of my Saturday morning back? No. But I did also get something else out of it. I'm getting a video out of it. And not just a video, a lifelong practice. Practicing being in the moment, dealing with reality on reality's terms, good or bad. Determining how you're going to decide what is good and what is bad. And choosing for yourself the kind of life that you want to experience by how present you're going to be and what kind of meaning you're going to infuse in your present moment. Get present. Learn to be present for the good and the bad. Stop resisting. You are not beating fear to the finish line. You are, what is it? You cannot be fear to the finish line. You are not cheating your way around pain. You are actively pursuing more and more of it. Let go of this idea that preparing for the worst case scenario is somehow doing anything other than creating more worst case scenarios for you to experience. You can either experience the pain of one death or experience the pain of one death plus the 100 others that you mentally put yourself through. Learn to give yourself the peace that you're actually desiring, that you're actually searching for, that protection that you're actually hoping for, that safety that you're actually hoping for, by giving yourself the current moment to feel as good as you can possibly feel and building that self-esteem and confidence in yourself that your future you always has you. They always have you. They've had you till this very moment. Instead of wasting your time trying to create a reality where you never have to experience, the suddenness of the unknown hitting you and the emotional turmoil that that might set you into. Become the kind of person that is a master at dealing with those situations. Like, would you want to partner up with somebody that has thought of a million things that could go wrong and has mentally prepared in that way, or the person that every single time you see them, they're facing it and they're doing their absolute best, and honestly they're crushing it because they're being present to it? Become that person. Give yourself the opportunity to be that person. You already are that person, but because you have planned in advance and thought about all of it the night before, you give all of the credit that's actually due to the version of you that showed up and dealt with things. You're giving the credit to the version of you that thought about the worst case scenario and actually made things harder for the current version of you because they didn't sleep all night. You're giving them the credit because you're like, well, that's the only reason that I was able to do it. Nope. The only reason that you were able to do it was because this current version of you did it. This version, she didn't do anything. It was just thoughts. The person that thinks a lot of thoughts, the person that thinks a lot has a lot of thoughts. They just had ideas. They just had fake realities, and they actually made the wonderful good night's sleep that you could have had a little bit more miserable, just a little bit more miserable. Get present. Get present for the good and the bad. You'll realize that there's more good than you ever realized. Like that little boy's supper, like it actually did look so good. And if he had allowed himself to be present to the moment, he would have been like, dang, this food is so good. I can't even think about the fact that that little boy said I had a crush on that girl. I love that he was allowing himself to process his emotions and feeling them. I love that. But my point is that a lot of the times we don't even realize how good our lives are because we're not actually living in our lives. We're living in our minds, and our minds are in turmoil. Our life doesn't suck, our thoughts do. The things that we're thinking suck. The things that we're planning and prepping and worrying about suck. It's not your external circumstance, it's the version of your mind that you bring into it. Get present. Get present for the good and the bad. You'll expand the joy in your life. You'll begin to attract more good. You'll build your confidence, self esteem to be able to face whatever comes your way. You'll become a resilient person. You'll acknowledge yourself as a resilient person. And you'll get to see how beautiful life becomes when you learn to genuinely go with the flow and meet reality when it comes and deal with reality on reality's terms. You've got this. You've been had this. You've done this your whole life. Now it's just time to become aware of when you're doing it and do it more often as possible. That being said, I've said everything I have to say about this. You got this. I believe in you. And I'm excited for you to start being able to believe in yourself as well. I will see you guys in my next video. Or is this a podcast episode? I don't know. Maybe both. See you next time. Bye.